My name's Dylan Harris. I'm a photographer and filmmaker with Aravaipa Running. And on June 11th, I'll be starting my 100-mile effort at Ring the Springs 100 in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Over the past year and a half, I've been working solely in endurance sports and following around mostly ultra runners, some cyclists, and through all that, I've found myself, in a front row seat, watching these athletes, everything from elite athletes to just your everyday Joes, kind of doing these incredible feats, these super inspirational things. And I guess just over time, being so close to that, it's kind of chipped away at me to the point where I feel like I have no option but to kind of do it myself, So, yeah, I started to kind of look into it. I've done a fair amount of things, long distance type efforts, but I've never, they've all been things I've felt relatively comfortable with, I guess. And the 100-mile distance is just sort of this I've learned throughout my time in the sport that it's kind of this distance that never feels comfortable for anybody. It's kind of this really difficult thing that no matter how fit you are, at some point you're going to reach the point where you're sort of questioning why you're out there and why you're doing it. And that's, I guess, what I'm kind of looking for, is just to better understand that. I signed up for this race called Ring the Springs 100-miler, and it is in Colorado Springs, which is special to me because I moved to Colorado Springs. I lived there for 5 years. I went to school there. I made a lot of friends there, and it's a place that I called home for a long time. So when I found out that Aravaipa Running was putting on an event there, I knew that I wanted to be a part of it, and it just so happens that I'm deciding to run the race instead of document it like I normally do. So I'm super excited. Not only the course itself it gives a really cool tour of Colorado Springs, and it runs through places I lived, places I used to trail run, mountain bike, rock climb. It's really just this amazing kind of tour of Colorado Springs, and to me, that's going to be pretty engaging to some extent. And so that's kind of what excited me in the first place. And I think there's deep down, it's kind of me trying to go to a place that I feel comfortable, right? Because I'm going to be doing something that's going to be relatively uncomfortable, and it's a place where I'll feel a bit familiar. And so I think that's kind of why I chose it. That's it, basically. Yeah, the answer is yes. I have definitely gotten to that place before, and up until this race that I'm signed up for here in the next month, I haven't been able to really push through that, I would say. I've always given myself a way out, and this time I want to push through, so that's the goal. Yeah, so this past weekend I did the Whiskey 91K, which traditionally is this big loop around Prescott that's about 58 miles. Because of fires this year, it was rerouted a bit, but still was the same distance. And that was my furthest effort in one single run. And, the cool thing about something that I'm really excited about, or something that I really wanted to be a part of this whole thing was I wanted to know what it feels like to prepare the correct way for something like this. Up until this point, I've only ever kind of just run for the day-to-day health and mental health side of things. And, I've never kind of prepared for something properly. And so I wanted that experience. I wanted to know what it was like to day in and day out prepare for an event and step up to the starting line, knowing that like I've done the work, and kind of believe in what I've done leading up to that to get me through this. And running this past weekend, running the Whiskey 91K was almost the biggest step towards kind of feeling comfortable to my 100-mile effort at Ring the Springs. Knocking out those 58 miles with kind of my 100-mile pace, my 100-mile nutrition in mind, trying to keep the correct mindset that my coach, Scott Trayer, is kind of teaching me about. It was super, it was very reassuring that like I'm on the right path. And I will say, once I hit 50 miles, I had about 8 miles left to the finish of my 91K. I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that in 6 weeks' time, I'm gonna have to regroup and get back out for another 50 miles through the night. And it's just a crazy thing to think about. It's something that's become so normalized in kind of the work that I do, the people I talk to constantly, the athletes I'm around. It's so normal to say, yeah, I ran a 100-mile race. But in all actuality, it's completely insane to do that all at once without stopping. And yeah, I don't know. Feels like the right time to see what it's like for myself. Yeah, so just to give a little context to this question, basically what happened is my wife, Emily, she, not too long ago, she ran her first ultramarathon. And she, we always joke because we do things very different. But there was no question in her mind when she was signed up for her first ultramarathon that she was going to find a coach, because her goal was to not only train and prepare, but also she wanted to learn as much as possible before the race and just kind of dive all in on it. And after watching that experience, I respected it so much. Something I've said to other people since then is that I used to think that spontaneously signing up for something difficult and just willing yourself through it was, it's like the epitome of mental toughness, right? But that, I totally have a different perspective on that now. After seeing what it takes to actually prepare your body to do these like really hard things, there's so much more there's so much more grit and just kind of mental fortitude that comes with preparation, and to not just show up on race day and will yourself through that one experience, but show up day in and day out to prepare yourself to just kind of celebrate your fitness to some extent on race day. And so after seeing Emily do that, it made me want to have that experience. Like, there was no question. And so fortunately enough, I'm in contact with Scott Trayer, who's an excellent runner himself, and just an awesome personality in endurance sports. And I kind of respect his perspective on running. And since working with him, it's been incredible. I mean, in the beginning, it was really tough. Things start out really slow. You're itching to get fit, and you want to be this thing right away. But I think it's been cool to have a coach who slows you down, lets you understand the strategy and building, and to some extent just trusting the process and just letting go of everything and just trusting it. And at this point I have no question, because I just ran 58 miles last weekend and I enjoyed every moment of it, which I couldn't say before. I don't think that would have been the case. So it's incredible. It's very comforting to know that am preparing correctly at the hands of like a professional, So, and at this point I feel fitter than I ever have for this type of event. I'd be lying to say that I'm not super nervous about it. Like, it's kind of one of those things where if you're totally on the outside of what running 100 miles would be like, if you're just kind of a spectator who's not in the sport, you would say, wow, that's crazy. I wouldn't do that, or these people are incredible, but you wouldn't really, you wouldn't engage with it that much more beyond that. It's interesting to start chasing this kind of goal, and the closer I get to it, the more I am almost afraid of it and like respect it, because now that I know what it takes to get close to it, I'm almost more nervous for it. And I think the nerves are good because it's going to keep me focused on training. I still have 6 weeks. I still have a lot of runs ahead of me, a lot of miles to put in, a lot of nutrition things to fix and whatnot. But I think that I think that the preparation I've done with Coach Scott is going to get me to the starting line no matter what. And I just anticipate that the nerves will kind of go, and I'll be in it at that point. So, it's an interesting thing, because I will say, like, it's a shift. It's a change in perspective to some extent, because I'm not focused on the finish line, really, which is interesting to say. I'm more focused on the moment where everything changes mentally for me. I'm focused on getting there. And then to me, that's kind of where the race begins, right? That's the place where I don't want to be, but I want to be all at the same time, you know? Honestly, if say the race went perfectly smooth the whole time, you know, I would feel a little bit let down to some extent, because I want to, like I said, I've just seen it time and time again through, you know, working in the sport, where people constantly are overcoming these feelings. And, you know, I have so much respect for that, and I want to see what that's all about. So, yeah, I don't remember your initial question, but hopefully.
Beautiful.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Nice.